Good morning, everyone. We're going to come to session. We're a couple of minutes late today, but we're going to get started. Especially for those who are live streaming from home, welcome to the final plenary of the meeting. I really don't have much in the way of housekeeping today, so let me just announce, first of all, that if we've got two of our trainee poster certificates that weren't collected yesterday. Jessica Tai, if you're here. Jessica Tai? Okay. And possibly if Sahana Nazir. Sahana is here as well. I have your certificate. Come see me after the meeting, yes? I'll be sending out a more detailed note to everybody shortly explaining how the CME claims process is working this year. It is different from the prior years. I know I did touch on this. I think it was yesterday morning at the start of the plenary session. We're operating two different claims process, one for live CME and one for enduring credit. And they are done in two separate blocks. We have until December 1st to do your live CME claim. But I'll send out a detailed note to everybody about how this works. But I do need to make sure that you understand that we have until December 1st to file your CME claims. And that applies to those of you watching from home as well. On the live stream, you will need to file your CME claim by then. And for those watching at home on the live stream, this qualifies as live CME credit. Okay, those are my comments for this morning. Sandy.
Good morning. Welcome to our closing plenary session. I hope you're coming away this week from the conference with new learning and new connections and returning to your work inspired to start next week. I'd like to take a quick moment to recognize and thank our annual meeting committee members and volunteers. If you were on any of the annual meeting subcommittees, or if you did micro-volunteering for abstract review, would you please stand briefly and let us recognize you and thank you for this outstanding experience. This meeting is the work of many, many people, and we hope that you've enjoyed the fruit of their labors. And then a brief round of applause to our Executive Director, James Frack, and all of the staff at Kellen for supporting us behind the scenes. All right, and now it's time for us to recognize a few additional award winners. And so I'd like to ask Priya Gopalan to come up and introduce our Studemeyer and Visiting Professor awardees.
So I'm going to start by introducing the Studemeyer Award. Unfortunately, we don't have anyone from that group here to receive the award, but I do want to make sure that they are recognized. So the Studemeyer Award for this year goes to Dr. Sarah Nagel-Yang for her work with the National Curriculum for Reproductive Psychiatry. She is a regular at this meeting, but unfortunately was not able to come this year. And for those of you who don't know, the NCRP is a very innovative and first of its kind of curriculum in the space of reproductive healthcare and reproductive mental health in particular. The Studemeyer was actually awarded for a collaborative that came out of the NCRP, the NCRP Fellowship Collaborative Didactic Series, which was a unique virtual learning experience that included both CL fellows and women's mental health fellows together in a virtual kind of space with an educational curriculum. And for the 2021-2022 year, they had 26 fellows participate across 16 programs across the country. So there's a team of collaborators that went along with this, but I'm only going to sort of read off Dr. Nagel-Yang's for this particular initiative, but congratulations to her. Okay. And then for the Visiting Professor Award, this year's winner is Dr. Gain Shinozaki. And the visiting professor will be Dr. Davin Quinn. This award has been granted to Dr. Shinozaki. He is a member of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Stanford University. Dr. Quinn will be visiting from the University of New Mexico and will engage with residents and fellows on neuromodulation targeting traumatic brain injury. And as you all know, Dr. Quinn is a well-known expert in this area of neuropsychiatry. So congratulations to Dr. Shinozaki. Dr. Shinozaki is here. Please come on up. Dr. Quinn as well, yes. So I am actually going to present the Dorfman Award next, which are the journal awards. I'm going to invite Dr. Saramelli, Dr. Powell, and Dr. Oldham to the stage as well as deputy editors of the Journal of the Academy of Consultation-Liaison Psychiatry. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. So for the journal awards, and just very, very quickly, the subcommittee of the awards, for the awards committee actually splits into subgroups and reads every single article from the Journal of the Academy of Consultation-Liaison Psychiatry across the year. The top 4 get rated from each category in a blinded fashion. I just wanted everyone to know that. And to this year's award winners, so for the best case report, the award winner, the award-winning article was titled Reversible Cerebral Vasoconstriction Syndrome Associated with Fluoxetine. First author was Dr. Tessa Manning, and accepting on behalf of that team is Dr. Michael Dunlap. So if Dr. Dunlap is here, please come to the stage. You can. For the next category of original research, the winning article was The Impact of the COVID-19 Pandemic on Psychiatric Emergency Service Volume and Hospital Admissions. The first author for this is Dr. Scott Simpson, and accepting the award on behalf of the team is Dr. Ann Gross. And the last category for the awards is the best review article. And this one was given to Cognitive Impairment in Adult Inflammatory Bowel Disease, a Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. First author on this is Dr. Christopher Hopkins, and receiving the award is Dr. Caleb Moulton. Dr. Moulton is here. Please come on up. Is Dr. Moulton here? All right, well, congratulations to all the award winners.
Congratulations to all of our award winners, and thank you for your efforts to educate and inform your colleagues and our trainees. And I want to especially thank Dr. Gopalan and her committee for all of their work in identifying and recognizing our award winners this year. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, and now for our main event. We have a real treat for you this morning with our debate titled Resolved, Trainees Interested in CL Psychiatry Should Be Able to Fast Track. If we could advance the slides to the definition, please. We might have some luck here. There we are. So fast tracking, before we get started, the definition we're working with here, if you're not familiar, is that the term we're using for the ACGME and the ABPN, allowing a trainee to get double clean fellowship training and board eligibility if they complete those fellowship experiences during those 4 years of residency. Our debate team will get more to this in a minute, but to start with, we'd just like to get a sense of the room and your thoughts on this. So please pull out your device. And with this one, go to pollev.com and / Sandra Rackley 747. I'm 747, I guess. And let us know your thoughts. Do you believe that residents should have the option to fast track into CL fellowship? Our donut is still resizing. People are finding the polls. Keep that poll handy. We're going to ask you a couple of more questions. I think we're slowing down our changes and the wiggles. So we also just want to get a sense of our audience this morning and where you are in your career development. So if you could let us know whether you're a student, resident, CL fellow, early career physician 5 years out of training, or if you fall into another category, like another professional. All right. And then one last question to set the stage. If you've already finished your training, have you had a role in leading residency or fellowship training? If you're a current trainee, go ahead and answer that. Otherwise, let us know if you've been part of a program committee, if you've been interviewing, if you've been a PD or APD, core faculty. This is 90% of our audience currently involved in training. That's fantastic. All right, so we're going to have a lot of passion around this idea. Okay. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our debate moderator, Dr. Sejal Shah. Dr. Shah is the Chief of the Division of Medical Psychiatry and the Associate Vice Chair for Clinical Consultation Services at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and an Assistant Professor at Harvard Medical School. She's a former CL Fellowship Director, and as most of you know, she's also our Program Chair for next year's ACLP annual meeting. She will be moderating today's debate, and I will hand over to her to introduce you to our debaters and our format this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Rackley. It is my pleasure to be here today. Welcome to the third and final plenary of the 69th annual ACLP meeting. As many of you know, a plethora of ACLP leaders have been extremely thoughtful about the issue of fast tracking. In November of 2013, the ACLP board took a unanimous stance supporting fast tracking into CL fellowships. In 2018, Dr. Jim Rundell, past president of ACLP, put together a workforce that included representatives of addiction, consultation-liaison, and geriatric psychiatry appointed by the subspecialty boards of the American Academy of Addiction Psychiatry, ACLP, and the American Association of Geriatric Psychiatry, and 3 of APA councils, the Council of Addiction Psychiatry, the Council of CL Psychiatry, and the Council of Geriatric Psychiatry. The charge of this task force was to study current psychiatry subspecialist workforce challenges and propose recommendations for future consideration that would have the potential to increase the subspecialist workforce or improve general psychiatrist clinical capabilities in the 3 subspecialty areas. ACLP representation included Dr. David Kroll and Dr. Sandy Rackley, And the APA-CL Council representatives were Dr. Junji Takashita and myself. An extensive document of combined final recommendations was compiled by Dr. Rundell in March of 2020, which is now available on the ACLP website for those interested. As part of a discussion about the potential ways that there could be a degree of integration between general psychiatry residency and subspecialty fellowship training, there was a recommendation for further discussion about permitting subspecialty training to be completed in the 4th postgraduate year. The next phase at that time was for subspecialty organizations to continue discussion about this topic. COVID ensued, but here we are today, back together to discuss this topic. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our two esteemed debaters today. Dr. Q. Lee, Fellow of the ACLP and Distinguished Fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, is a CL Psychiatry Fellowship Program Director at the University of California, San Francisco, and Director of Psychiatry Consultation at the San Francisco VA Medical Center. He's the Psychiatry Clerkship Director at UCSF and the Deputy Associate Chief of Psychiatry at the San Francisco VA, and Professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at UCSF. Let's welcome Dr. Lee. Dr. Lisa J. Rosenthal, Fellow of the ACLP, Distinguished Fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, is Chief of the Division of Consultation Psychiatry, Fellowship Director of CL Psychiatry, Associate Vice Chair for Clinical Affairs in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at Northwestern University, as well as Professor at the Feinberg School of Medicine. Let's welcome Dr. Rosenthal. For the purposes of this debate, we have decided to be on a first name basis. So we will be going by Q, Lisa, and Sejal. For today's debate, we will start off with brief opening statements from Q and Lisa. These will be followed by 4 predetermined debate questions. Q and Lisa will alternate between who provides the first answer. We will crowdsource additional questions through the meeting app, so please keep your devices handy and submit your questions as we debate. Sandy will be monitoring these questions and will choose a few for us to ask of our debaters. If you see a question that you like, upvote it so that it has a better chance of being asked. We're hoping to get to as many of these as we can after our 4 predetermined questions. Welcome, Q and Lisa. Mike, right? All right, why don't we start with opening statements? Q, why don't you go first and tell us what you would want us to know about your stance on fast tracking? Let's start with you.
Well, thank you, Sejal. I'm here to support fast tracking. So who among us hasn't been curious about life in the fast lane? The thrill, the glamour, the adventure. And while you may think that I'm wearing running shoes to demonstrate how I live on the fast track, as you all know now, within medicine refers to beginning a fellowship 1 year before the standard time required for residency training. This has been allowed for years within internal medicine, such that their residents may enter cardiology or endocrinology, for example, after 2 rather than the standard 3 years of training. Thus, if CL Psychiatry allows fast tracking, then adult psychiatry residents would be able to become CL Psychiatry fellows after 3 years of residency training. In thinking about fast tracking, I think it is important to think about competency-based versus time-based training. With milestones, the ACGME has attempted to make assessments more competency-based. The reality, however, is that we're still using time-based assumptions. If medical education wishes to implement a fully realized competency-based training model, then competency should not be tethered to time. In other words, timeframes are antithetical. To move towards such a world, time variable competency-based champions must develop what the learner's competencies should be, how to determine how to measure them, and agree upon standardized competency-based language. This does not mean, however, that the teabag approach of using timeframes is unreasonable. In other words, the ACGME has estimated how long it takes for most psychiatry residents to be ready, like a steeping cup of tea, and that timeframe has been 4 years. For the residents, that is, not for the tea, which is really bad after 4 years. I would argue, though, that 3 years are enough for most adult psychiatry residents to meet their expected competencies and to be able to practice independently. I'm not arguing that all residents who are interested in fellowship must fast track. In fact, some residents may not be ready after 3 years, or some may choose to do 4 years as residencies before starting fellowship. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't make fast tracking available. Much of the focus in support of fast tracking has been its potential to increase the numbers of CL psychiatrists. And while I think would likely happen, although I'm not sure how large those numbers would be. That being said, I think there are real merits of fast tracking when you consider the positive impact it could have on access to the care we provide, diversity and equity for our community, and the overall educational and mentorship experience of our fellows. And I'll go into more detail when we get to the pre-plan questions.
Thank you so much. Very thought-provoking ideas. Lisa, your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Sejal, and thank you, Sandy, and hello, Q.
Hello, Lisa.
There's a lot of people lurking in the back in case we suck, but there are a lot of chairs up front. So I think ultimately that fast tracking is not going to be able to solve the things we really are hoping it will solve, and that there's just too much at risk for us to support the idea. And of course, I've thought about every possible reason for this, but I'm going to present just a few of them. First, from a systemic perspective, and then I'm going to go through some ideas from the stakeholder perspectives. So what is the systemic impact of fast tracking going to be? I believe that fast tracking is not just about CL psychiatry. It's about the future of psychiatry in general, and that if general psychiatry is compromised, we will also be compromised. I think we all agree that the goal is a diverse, well-trained, and talented workforce ready to face the crisis of mental health care in the United States and maybe even the world. But the world needs more excellent training spots and not necessarily more subspecialists. Another perspective is that a general psychiatrist with subspecialty training is a true expert and a true subspecialty expert. Fast tracking will really mean fewer psychiatrists with real subspecialty expertise. Something else that I feel fairly strongly about is that a 3-year residency is the death knell for psychotherapies and the promotion of a pill-pushing psychiatric forum. The other thing is that the reality is we are a very rapidly growing field, as evidenced by our membership numbers and meeting attendance. And while I would love us to keep growing more and more and more, we're actually doing fairly well as a subspecialty already. Fast isn't cheap. We like this idea that we will save money, that we will pay our trainees more, but And this argument is that faster loan payback is a good reason for us to consider fast tracking. But let's think about the costs. First of all, less training is a great reason to pay us less. And pressure to compete with other types of providers who have less training doesn't mean that less training will benefit us. We need to remain the experts, and I've never been sorry to have a high level of expertise in my interdisciplinary practice. I also have a buddy in the APA, not Becca, who mentioned that there was a rumor a few years ago that funding for the 4th year of psychiatry residency was going to be cut. And I think that an argument for us to argue for fast tracking is handing them that on a silver platter, because if we say that the 4th year is not essential, why are they going to pay for it? And as Sejal mentioned, there is a little bit of data about fast tracking. ADPERT has done some surveys in 2013 and 2016. Only about 25% of their membership supported fast tracking. The APA had a work group in 2015, not the task force that Jim Rundell ran, and they recommended very strongly against fast tracking. All right, so those are some big ideas about why fast tracking is just a terrible idea. Then let's think about our trainees, right? Fourth year, that's 25% of training, and it's hard to quantify. But what it means to me is opportunities for leadership, for scholarship, for psychotherapy, and maybe time to learn other subspecialty knowledge that CL psychiatrists need to know, like addiction and forensics. And I'm curious if there are psychiatry residents here in the room, what percentage of them are actually PGY4s? Because I decided to be a CL psychiatrist in my fourth year at this meeting. Fast tracking would also require trainees to determine their subspecialty focus at the end of their PGY2 year, about 2 months into their outpatient experience. How the hell do they know that they want to do it? And what is the evidence base that our milestones actually tell us at the end of PGY2 year that they are going to be ready to be competent psychiatrists? I just don't think we have that data, and I feel skeptical that the data will actually support this. The other thing is we also don't know if applicants want it. I think most of us suspect they might, because who doesn't want a real salary? But frankly, as somebody said to me just the other day at this meeting, if we paid fellows well, we wouldn't be having this debate. All right, residency programs, and I'm almost done, I'm sorry. But residency programs, you mentioned, the milestones data, and I already talked about that, but it's very difficult for residency program directors to plan ahead. So if we think that a lot of our trainees will choose to fast track, that means it will degrade what the fourth year is, what it can do. It's going to have to be a bunch of electives because we won't be able to count on having trainees to take care of our patients and to do clinical programs. So it will degrade the fourth year. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on training directors, first of all, to pass people who may not be ready, because you're talking about making them make a financial sacrifice. And also, people may be showing up to fellowships who actually need remedial training, right? Because we don't always know. And residency program directors are going to have to help it, because I'm a fellowship program director and I don't know how to remediate general residency type skills, which leads me to the impact on me and the fellowship program directors. And we're, I'll keep it brief, but we're going to be working with trainees who are not already well-formed psychiatrists, who are actually still residents, who need a different type of teaching and will have a different ability level on our clinical services. And while I might be able to count on having my fellowship filled, at least I hope so, I would be less likely to feel certain that I'm training somebody who's going to be here with us, somebody who really wants to join the guild and be part of our subspecialty. So if fast tracking becomes an option, we may see other applicants who have less interest and engagement in our field in the long term. And I'll shut up. And maybe later I'll thank all the people I want to thank for their input on these points.
Lisa, thank you so much. Also very thought-provoking. So we're going to move to our pre-planned questions. Question number 1. With competency-based education and evaluation, there's been discussion about the length of training programs. Please discuss your opinion about the value of the 4th postgraduate psychiatry residency year as it relates to your stance on fast tracking. We're going to start with Q.
Thank you again, Sejal. And thank you for that opening statement, Lisa. But I do agree with you, Lisa, that the 4th year of psychiatry residency training does have value. One could argue that in some areas of psychiatry, 3 years is in fact too short. Examples might be careers focused on interventional psychiatry, psychodynamic psychotherapy, quality improvement, and advocacy. And I absolutely believe that longitudinal treatment and experiences over time benefits the development of trainees interested in these kinds of careers. but most residency programs do not have longitudinal components or longitudinal components as a large part of their curriculum. Fourth years thus become largely elective, and in order to allow residents to individuate within the footprint of residency, including chief residencies. However, many of these electives would not necessarily be viewed as part of the core curriculum required to become a competent psychiatrist. Residents may in fact seek training outside the residency curriculum. One example is choosing to engage in courses in a psychoanalytic institute, for example. I'd also say the point that fast tracking would be the death knell of long-term psychotherapy. The focus on long-term psychotherapy training has decreased considerably since I was a resident over 25 years ago, and I've certainly seen a large number of people entering practicing psychotherapy, and that has not been the death knell whatsoever. I agree with the much discussed contention that the fourth year of psychiatry residency provides an opportunity to develop more maturity and individuation. However, I also think that a resident who fast tracks into CL Psychiatry Fellowship would have the same opportunities for such, but with the potential advantage of having a smaller cohort of mentors and educators who can really devote more time and energy, devoting the attention to the fellows' learning and development than might be possible in the fourth year of residency as it currently exists. I also want to acknowledge that fellows could likely be less skilled, but I think that, for example, skills learned at a fourth year CL elective could effectively be learned during a full year of CL fellowship training. Furthermore, I would argue that fast tracking already exists within many residency programs in the form of a research track, in which residents devote the vast majority of their PGY 4-year to doing research. And yet we also graduate them as being competent in psychiatry to practice independently, just as their non-research colleagues are. I want to reiterate that residents may not know what the hell they want to do at their second year, but they don't have to choose during their second year. They can choose in their third year still to become fellows in their fourth year, even with fast tracking. I'd also say that to Lisa's point about training or having to remediate, it will really be, I agree, up to residency training directors and us as fellowship directors to ensure that the people that we are accepting into our fellowship programs are competent. And so if we're able to do that, then the issue of remediation becomes less of an issue. I think also that this idea that we're training residents instead of fellowships, in some ways the terms are semantic, because I think we can all agree that our development as psychiatrists is lifelong, is career long, and that our development doesn't end with the end of training, however we define it. And that is really about learning from our patients, our experiences, our mentors, our colleagues over time, and that we continue to grow as psychiatrists even after whatever we may call training.
Thank you, Q. Lisa.
Well, it's interesting. We thought about many of the same things from a different perspective because, right, one of my points is that we are in terrible need of research and investigation within CL psychiatry. But I feel that fast tracking will make it a lot harder for us to train people who are able and ready to do that hard work. And that if we don't do that, other people like intensivists publishing an awful lot of stuff about delirium will happen. I also think it's very hard to encapsulate, as I said, a quarter of training. My own fourth year was incredibly rich in knowledge growth, in consolidation of training in my first year coming to the ACLP, and I wouldn't be a CL psychiatrist without it. But also, I believe in psychodynamic therapy. And I don't know, Q, if you knew that I was writing a musical.
Oh, I love musicals.
Well, it's a spoof on the Book of Mormon. It's called the Book of the DSM-5 TR. And one of the title songs goes, I believe in psychodynamic therapy, and I believe in psychopharmacology too, and I believe that the fourth year of psychiatry residency is important. I am a psychiatrist, and a psychiatrist just believes.
We'll see if we can get that on the website.
Nobody's ever going to hire me to sing it, though.
I'll help you stage it.
I have a lot of other songs, actually.
Maybe later on in this debate.
I'm done. Wasn't sure if she was done. Okay. We are now going to move on to our second pre-planned debate question. Medical training, as we know, is long and expensive and disproportionately disadvantages underrepresented in medicine candidates. Please discuss your thoughts on this as it relates to fast tracking. We are going to start with Lisa.
Well, to be very serious, this is a fundamental problem in psychiatry. I think everybody in this room and online knows that we need a more representative workforce. I just don't think fast tracking is a solution to that problem for a variety of reasons. First of all, as I keep saying, fast isn't cheap, right? We could really talk about other opportunities like loan repayment, like subspecialty billing codes, like a lot of other financial opportunities that we don't have in place yet to support those who may be in need. And thanks to Paul Dessan, I have some of the data from the match generally, not just in psychiatry, but for every specialty in medicine that has a match. And I was a little surprised, frankly, to see that psychiatry does very well with underrepresented minority numbers in general. We are way better than neurology, for example. And CL psychiatry is actually not that different from general psychiatry. We are lower in one category, higher in another category, but actually we're about the same. And so it's not clear to me how fast tracking would help move those numbers further when you have to look at the numbers in general in medicine and how we attract them. And I'm so grateful for the DEI task force that Q led and that's still working very hard to think about improving this devastating problem that we have, which I think is extremely important. I think that fast tracking, though, will lower our training requirements. It will lower our level of expertise and experience, and that's a short-sighted way to approach this critical question. We must support a well-trained and diverse workforce in psychiatry, but I'm not convinced that fast tracking is going to have a significant impact.
Thank you, Lisa. Q, your response.
According to the AAMC, in 2019, 91% of Black or African American students, 84% of Hispanic and Latinx students, and 80% of Native Americans and Alaskan Natives graduated with medical school debt, compared to 73% of all students. That same year, 41% of Black matriculants into medical school, 24% of Hispanic ones, and 30% of Native Americans entered with $25,000 or more of pre-medical debt, compared to 13% of white students. Given these data, the opportunity for an increased salary earlier in one's training may make fast tracking very attractive for URIM residents considering CL psychiatry. And while I acknowledge that our numbers are similar to the numbers in terms of race, ethnicity, in general psychiatry, I still think that there is a lack of diversity that needs to be addressed. And even if that number is incrementally small, if it is sustained over time, that's a win. And this could also improve, fast track could also promote inclusivity within our field by increasing long-term wealth, since not all people come from wealthy backgrounds. Having increased numbers of URIM CL psychiatrists may also improve access to care and patient experience of care. In a 2006 publication by the Department of Health and Human Services entitled "The Rationale for Diversity in the Health Professions, a Review of the Evidence," they found that minority health professionals disproportionately serve more minority and other medically underserved populations, and that minority patients report receiving better interpersonal care from practitioners of their own race and ethnicity. Thus, if fast tracking does increase the number of URIM fellowship candidates, even by a small amount, then that could translate into greater access to CL services and patient satisfaction among traditionally marginalized populations. Additionally, an increased diversity of CL psychiatrists would grow the pool of potential mentors and role models for URIM trainees interested in our field, and which in turn could promote further diversity moving forward.
Thank you, Q. Our third debate question. There has been a large focus on recruitment of residents into CL fellowship to increase the numbers in our subspecialty. How would your stance on fast tracking support or hinder this effort? Q.
As I mentioned, the potential attractiveness of a shortened training time and a larger salary earlier in one's career could contribute to an increase in the number of CL fellows and filled fellowship slots. And while I acknowledge with Lisa's point that we are a wonderful field, I do think that there is a shortage of CL expertise out there, and the number of fellowship slots going unfilled is anywhere from a quarter to a third in a given year. Now, while I also acknowledge that the increase in CL fellows and fellowship slots may not be as great as one might hope, as I've mentioned before, even a small sustained growth in the number of CL psychiatrists is worthwhile, especially with respect to expanding access, much needed access to our expertise. Lisa mentioned the concern about scholarship and other people, perhaps other specialties or subspecialists doing research. I would argue that fast tracking could in fact advance scholarship in the sense that some CL fellowship programs could add a second year devoted entirely to research, and that someone who's fast tracking might find that more appealing because the entire footprint of their training would be 5 years as opposed to 6. The second year could also potentially be used for subspecialization within CL psychiatry for those fellows who are interested. Financially, and Lisa has mentioned that that fast does not mean cheap, or fast is not cheap. But financially, just thinking about it from a fellowship director standpoint, it is likely that an increase in filling fellowship slots through fast tracking would actually make funding for those slots more secure, since GME stipends could well be shifted from residencies to CL fellowships, which I'm sure makes every fellowship program director pick up their ears, but may not be so attractive to the residency program directors in the room. But just wanted to make sure that's a financial point.
Thank you, Q. Lisa.
Well, I have to concur that fast tracking seems very likely to increase the number of trainees choosing to do fellowships. My point is the cost of that is too high. I think a lot of people in this room know that I love CL and I love the ACLP, and I owe my career to so many people in this room who have helped me, mentored me, written me promotion letters, and I've spent hundreds of hours volunteering, and I've loved every minute of it. But I also think that we need to think broadly and communally, rather than just as subspecialists. And of course, there's a massive shortage of CL psychiatrists because there's a massive shortage of psychiatrists. And that what does the world need now? I won't sing anymore, but what does the world need now? Post-pandemic, we have even more of a workforce shortage. Psychiatry is a rapidly growing field. We've shown that graph a couple times, and Google helped me calculate percentage growth from 2007 to 2020. We grew, the ACLP membership grew by 188%. And yes, while our fellowship fill rates have been static, the number of programs and the number of fellows has steadily increased, right? So I think that we are doing okay, and that fast tracking is not just about CL, it's about the future of psychiatry in general. And again, many trainees will probably choose a subspecialty if fast tracking exists, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stay in our field and meaningfully contribute to CL psychiatry.
Thank you, Lisa. Our fourth predetermined debate question. How do you feel fast tracking would impact the field of CL psychiatry as a whole? Lisa.
Well, my answer is kind of a question right back at you, which is, who should answer that question? What would our patients say to that question? And I kind of doubt that the answer is, I wouldn't mind if my doctor had less training. So what would the impact be from a patient perspective, from a community and social perspective, I think is a very important question. You know, and while I enjoy collaborating with many colleagues in different disciplines with different levels of training, I have never ever wondered whether my level of expertise and education was helpful or necessary. And the idea that to compete with some of our interdisciplinary colleagues, we should lower our level of expertise is just absurd. In a competitive market, our ability to perform at the very highest levels is not only essential, it's what's going to distinguish CL Psychiatry from all the other people who are trying to do what we do and take over. In my opinion, if anything, CL Psychiatry training is probably already a little too short for the scholarly training and experience that we really want people to have. And, you know, I surveyed a bunch of people before this, and thank you to all the colleagues who answered, but I'm going to read what one of them said, which says, the extended and comprehensive training of physicians is a large part of what sets us apart from and makes a physician more valuable than psychologists, NPs, and PAs. Many other specialties are extending training. It's not like there's any less to know.
Thank you, Lisa. Q.
Right back at you, Lisa. You know, I've been thinking a lot about what, you know, we did not obviously prepare this in advance. So I've been thinking a lot about Lisa's amazing points, and I want to thank you for those, Lisa. I think that, you know, your concerns about the impact of fast tracking in our field and asking our patients, you know, what would they want, I think is an important one. And, you know, I think that this concern that the potential concern that residents will decide to go to CL Psychiatry because of fast tracking when they would not have considered it previously, I just think the numbers are just not that large. I mean, I love CLP, and I love so many people who have mentored me over the years, and consultation-liaison psychiatry is as we all know, a challenging field, a field where we work hard, where we're underpaid, where we really have to make a commitment to what we're doing, and to sort of have a resident say, you know, I think I'll go into CL because I can do 1 year less of training, doesn't seem realistic to me. I still think that we are going to have passionate fellows who we've decided are ready after 3 years to enter our field, and that our expertise as a field will not be compromised. I also think, again, that scholarship can become something that could remain in a domain with the opportunities for scholarship in a 5th year of training after the 4th year of a fast tracking, or the traditional CL fellowship in their 4th year. And for all these reasons, as well as I think really important reasons to the potential increase of access to care among traditionally underserved populations, the opportunities to promoting diversity and inclusivity within our field, and also the opportunity to provide wonderful education mentorship earlier in the careers of our residencies who are prepared for it, are all reasons that I believe that we should adopt fast tracking as part of the evolution of the field of CL psychiatry in the 21st century.
Thank you so much, Q. I want to thank both Lisa and Q for answering our predetermined debate questions for today. Thank you to all of you that are submitting questions through our app. Our next question, which is from the audience: how does our conversation about CL fast tracking link with the other psychiatry subspecialties? Should we go along with whatever they decide or go it alone? We'll start with Q.
Well, we've got it alone before in the form of the match, and addiction has followed. And I think that, you know, in that way, we were really pioneers among the psychiatric subspecialties. I mean, beyond child and adolescent psychiatry, which entered the match. But and so among the 1 year fellowships, we have been pioneers and really helped build the roadmap for our colleagues in other subspecialties. And I think that that's something that we should continue to do, yet in a thoughtful manner, which is partly why we're having this debate today. And so, yeah, that would be my response to that.
Thank you, Q. Lisa.
Again, I would say that this group of subspecialists with subspecialty interest shouldn't be the ones to answer that question. That this is a question that impacts our community and healthcare in general. And I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that the issue is only up to us. I think there has to be some sort of consensus because it is a very critical issue.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you to our audience, that's keeping our questions coming. We have about 10 minutes left, so if you have a burning question, please continue to enter them through the app. Question 6, our residents are often counseled that a CL fellowship is more important for academic career development, but that if they want to community practice, they can start right away. How does your stance on fast tracking influence preparation for non-academic practice? We'll start with Lisa.
Can you say the last sentence again?
Absolutely. How does your stance on fast tracking influence preparation for non-academic practice?
That's a very fair question. And it is something that we say, right? That a CL fellowship is really essential if you want to remain within academia. I think it speaks to the incredible shortage in our workforce, right? You can get hired to do just about anything. I could go work as a child psychiatrist if I wanted to with zero training, just because I'm a psychiatrist and people would pay me to do that. I don't necessarily think that's the ideal. But of course, we can learn on the job. You can study. I mean, my first year as a faculty member, I learned more than I ever did in residency. I'll tell you that. It's not impossible, but would people maybe wish that they had gone to transplant and done cardiology and all the other things? Probably. I think that's more a question of the incredible shortage in our workforce and the plethora of jobs there are available to just about any alive person with an MD.
Thank you, Lisa. Q.
I think that I think that in terms of non-academic positions, the job growth in our field really is in the community and in integrated care in particular, and collaborative care. And I think that because, as I've mentioned, integrated care in residency, within residency training, to learn to do it well, really, it requires a longitudinal experience. And I think some residency programs are not set up to do that. And I've talked to a number of applicants to my fellowship just from experience who have said that they want to do a CL fellowship that has more of an outpatient focus because they just didn't get that experience in residency. And so if we want to train, have well-trained integrated care psychiatrists in our community, I think fast tracking could actually enhance that because we would be able to offer that integrated care experience in a fourth year of fellowship, as opposed to a fourth year who comes out of residency training, decides they don't want to do a CL fellowship because they don't want an academic career and aren't well trained in integrated care. So.
Thank you, Q. Our next audience question: if we retain a 5-year path, how would you best optimize that? Do you have thoughts on a 3+2 or 4+1 CL research tracks, or strategies to enhance the PGY 4-year to increase its value prior to the fellowship year? Q.
Well, I think I've addressed that to some point, to some extent before. I really love the idea of a 3+2 in terms of, again, advancing scholarship, really delving into something that fellows interested in, whether it be area of research or a subspecialization such as neuropsychiatry or women's mental health, for example. And so I think that the advantage of fast track is that we can really think about ways to really enhance across a 5-year footprint how we design our fellowships to really, again, improve the mentorship and value of the experiences that our fellows have.
Thank you, Q. Lisa.
That's a very interesting idea, and I'm pondering it. I think one of the challenges in general in CL psychiatry is that we are a very clinically based specialty, right? Most people in this room are not researchers. So how many of our fellowships are actually set up to support research. I'm certainly not opposed to the idea of a 2-year fellowship in research and scholarship. I think that would be really neat. I don't know that we have the ability to do it on a broad scale, but that would be cool. We need more people doing the scholarship.
I believe.
I think we're getting a reprise here.
That always happens at the second act, you know.
Thank you, Lisa. Our next question from the audience. How is your stance informed by other specialties? What do underrepresented in medicine, child and adolescent psychiatry fellows think of what you're talking about? What about other subspecialties who are deciding to actually other specialties who are deciding to actually lengthen training? We'll start with Lisa.
I would love to know what they think. I have scoured the literature, Google, and everything else I can find for data on this. And I appreciate the few people, including you, Sajal, who sent me some reports, and Jim Rendell and Paul DeSun and James Frack for sending me things, and the people that I talked to at the APA. Actually, one of the only helpful things I found online was a student forum, like one of those, I hate my professor's websites talking about fast tracking. And I can't say I know the answer to that question, but it is true. Some specialties are lengthening training because of the volume of expertise needed to work in rapidly more complicated fields. So I think that would be a great thing to study if we could.
Thank you, Lisa. Q.
My research on this topic and discussions with my medical colleagues, actually, from what I've learned, I'm no expert, and like Lisa said, there's nothing really published in this area at all. And I saw that student forum too. And so, but my understanding is actually that the medical subspecialties who are fast tracking are lengthening their training in order to allow for fellows to engage in research earlier, and that they lengthen the research portion of the training, but not necessarily the clinical part. And in fact, the clinical footprint overall stays the same and maybe a little bit longer, but it's really to allow the training is lengthening to really allows fellows to delve into research, really work on getting their K awards, for example, earlier in their careers. It's really research driven. This idea of lengthening training is my understanding.
Thank you, Q. Thank you to the audience for these fantastic questions. Keep them coming. Next question. How do you think fast tracking during fellowship should intersect with the 2021 ABMS recommendation that programs of duration greater than 2 years should allow for 6 weeks off for parental or family medical leave without extending training or pulling from vacation time? We'll start with Q.
I think the underlying question here is if someone does 3 years of residency and then they fast track, you've already lost a year of residency. And so then what are the implications for that in someone who's in their basically 4th year of training as opposed to their 5th year, I think is where that's coming from.
That is also my understanding.
So, I think it really gets back, and there was a lot of discussion about this at the Fellowship Directors Forum, and I think it's a really great question. I think it really gets back to the competencies, and that we really need to think about competencies and not time so much. We're so focused on time and how many weeks, and it's really about competencies. And some fellows will take 6 weeks off in their 4th year, and it will not impact. You'll feel confident about graduating them at the end of the year. And some fellows where they fast track or not, you wouldn't. But I think that that in a way we need to sort of kind of break out this like it has to be amount of time you spend on the service. It really has to be about assessing competencies. And I think that that's a hard thing to do. We haven't done a lot of research in this area. And again, as I said, we in some ways I don't think milestones have been that useful, frankly, and there's not a lot of data about that. But we could do it better. But I think that's really what the focus should be. I mean, I know I'm not answering the question, but I think with respect to this debate, I think the concept, I think what I'm saying makes sense. Yeah,
you are answering the question, which is how much time does it take to be a good doctor?
Right.
And the answer is if I know. Yeah, we don't know. I'm not active in AdPERT and I'm not a residency program director, but I don't think there's actually any data about the competency-based learning or the milestones yet. And I don't know if there ever will be, where we can say, well, these are the ways that we can prove somebody is an adept clinician, scholar, lifelong learner, and not too arrogant to practice. I think that we just need more information. We're not at the point where we can say, yes, those 6 weeks are going to make somebody into a good doctor or not. That said, I, of course, support the idea that people need to take time away from training, right? So fundamentally speaking, there's no rules. We were just talking about this at the program directors forum on Wednesday night, and Paul did a survey of the people in the room, like how many weeks off do you think is reasonable to not extend your training? And frankly, I don't think anybody in the room said, well, it depends on their milestones, because right, it's a gestalt. Do we think that they're ready?
Thank you, Lisa. Our next question. What about double fellowships or combined training in 2 years, like addiction or critical care psychiatry fellowship, women's mental health, transplant psychiatry, etc.? Lisa.
Fabulous. I mean, you find me the trainee who wants to get paid half a salary and do 2 years instead of 1. Great, we can set that up, especially if they're clinically based. I think that there would be jobs for those folks. We do at Northwestern offer a 2-year option if you want to do scholarly research with women's mental health and a few other things. I've never had anybody take us up on it, but I mention it to all of our applicants.
Thank you, Lisa. Q.
I agree. Fabulous. And again, as I said, I think fast tracking would actually promote that. I think we all know, and I know several people who've done 2 one-year fellowships and have chosen to, do a year in addiction, a year in forensic, or a year in forensic, and 2 years in child. And also think it's fabulous.
Do we have any more audience questions? We do. Next question, which is going to be our last. What would your thoughts be about trainees having the option of starting residency as a CL track trainee with fellowship included, as well as the option to go elsewhere for the fellowship year? What about possibilities for a triple board med psych CL program? Q.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I've.
Would you like me to repeat the question? Okay. This is a very thoughtful question. What would your thoughts be about trainees having the option of starting residency as a CL track trainee with fellowship included, as well as the option to go elsewhere for the fellowship year?
I see.
What about possibilities for a triple board med psych CL program?
Okay. So, I think the idea of the CL track and a CL fellowship is a nice one. And I think that that's something that actually we used to offer, or organizations used to offer, or at least UCSF used to offer a 4th year, basically CL focused fellowship or CL focused training. Because CL fellowships were not accredited, they weren't necessarily they were nearly not as common as, or the numbers were much lower than they are now. And so that has been a model in the past. I think that for a fellow who wishes to, for a resident who wishes to do that, they may choose to do that, but then in some ways, and then choosing to go to a fellowship elsewhere. I think that the issue with that, I mean, you're saying that they would do the CL fellowship in the 4th year, or that they would?
That is my understanding from the question.
Is that right? That they would?
But that they would be allowed to go else. They wouldn't have to sign up to remain at their home residency program.
I see.
Is my understanding.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood the question. So they would do a CL track and then go elsewhere. Yeah, why not? I would love to have that resident come to my fellowship program if they actually went through a CL track and got that additional training. I think that would be great. The idea of a triple boarded in psychiatry, medicine, and CL psychiatry. If a fellow wants to do that, I also say, why not? I mean, I think I have to say, I also think that there's some people, some people are like kind of lifelong fellows. They're not sure. They're not ready to start
Aren't we all?
their careers yet, and they want more training. And I think that's fine. And that's what I love about this debate about fast tracking. The idea of fast tracking really opens up our minds to what might be possible in terms of training. I mean, even if we don't decide to do it as a group, but really, it's really getting us to talk about different models of training and breaking out of what we've been doing for many, many years now. And so I love these questions because I think these are all potentially great paths for a trainee who wants to pursue them.
Thank you, Q. Lisa.
Well, I'm not opposed to the idea. I think that one of the things about CL psychiatry is that we're good at everything, right. And that it would be a little bit harder to do my job well if I didn't have broad knowledge in many things, and that maybe there's such a thing as too much CL. And I'm sort of blinded by the light, but we have a wonderful trainee right now who I was talking to last week, and I'm sorry, I can't see anything, about who really wants to go into CL psychiatry. And I think I introduced her to you because she wants to go to Brigham. That's you, Brittany. And she came up to me and said, what else should I do? What else should I learn before I do fellowship, right? So you got to learn your addiction. You got to learn a little bit about forensics. It's helpful to know psychotherapy, positive psychology. You got to know these things because that's what makes us experts and unique. So I'm not opposed to having a CL track, right? It's a little bit of a specialty, but I'm not sure it actually gives an advantage to a CL psychiatrist to have done a lot of CL before they do fellowship. I think that right, we're good at everything. And I would argue that typifies a CL psychiatrist.
Thank you. Q, Lisa, thank you for an extremely thought-provoking debate. As true leaders in education, you've provided us with a fantastic view into this incredibly complex topic. I want to give you a chance for a 30-second closing statement if you'd like. We'll start with Lisa.
Oh God, I didn't know we were doing this. I have nothing memorized, and I'm out of songs. I think I'll end with what I started saying, which is that I don't think fast tracking is going to solve what we're hoping it will solve, and that the risk is just too high.
Thank you, Lisa. Q.
I don't view fast tracking as the solution to some of the things that we're trying to achieve. I think it's a step towards, again, trying to improve access to care, promoting diversity and inclusivity, thinking about how we can enhance education mentorship of our fellows. And I'd also just say that I hope, looking ahead, I hope that you'll all join us next year when Lisa and I will be debating whether there should be a hyphen between the words fast and track.
Or consultation-liaison.
Oh, exactly.
So much to debate, so little time. Thank you, Q. To Lisa and Q again, thank you. Round of applause for our debaters. Thank you to the ACLP for hosting this debate. Thank you to all of us who joined us in person and online. Thank you for the incredibly thoughtful questions. To the audience, I encourage you to think about how this idea doesn't have to be dyadic. Some of the questions actually reflected this. A yes or a no to fast tracking, sure, that's a great topic to debate, but there could be other models to pilot. Food for thought as we're going to move on towards our closing lunch in just a few minutes. But before that, I'll turn it back over to Sandy.
So we are going to make you say yes or no. After hearing from our intrepid debaters, do you agree with Q that residents should have the option to fast track into CL fellowship? Or do you agree with Lisa that we need to preserve the training structure and preserve the PGY 4-year? And you don't get an I don't know on this one. Whoa!
I feel like I'm watching polls come in.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Oh.
Wow. Yeah. Now we're counting the mail-in ballots. All right. With that, we'll declare Lisa the winner. We want to ask 2 more questions. We've got much stronger feelings about the PGY 4-year in general. More unanimous feelings, but some holdouts. And then as we're rolling out, we'd like to give you the opportunity to text in any other thoughts, comments, reflections that this debate has brought up for you.
And we're thinking about possibly writing a paper, so please do write in comments, because I want to, we want to see what.
That's going in the paper.
Good, keep writing, because we'll read them.
I know some of you had thoughts and suggestions in the Q&As.
The debate is being had by those who have
not done
fellowship.
Well, that's true. I did not do a fellowship. I was grandfathered.
Yes, I was too.
The moderator did a fellowship.
I did a fellowship. All right. We will allow your comments and your thoughts to continue rolling in, and we're going to end on this screen. But with that, I see our red light blinking and you are hungry. And so we will sadly be bringing our scientific program to an official close. We hope this has been a wonderful week of learning and connecting. Please join us across the hall in the grand ballroom for a closing lunch and to start making plans to join us in Austin next year for CLP 2023. Thank you all.